What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to talk about one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history. A man by the name of Lenny Cooke. A man who was touted as the LeBron James destroyer. A man who was touted as the #1 high school prospect in the entire country. Now, if you're familiar with the name Lenny Cooke and maybe know his story just a bit, stick around because I think I have some details that might shock you or that you might not know about. Now, if Lenny Cooke is a completely foreign name to you, then definitely stick around because it's one of the wildest what-if stories in the NBA/basketball history. It's just truly insane. Just trust me on this. Now, this video will be broken up into two parts. Part 1 is kind of discussing who Lenny Cooke is, his background. And then part 2, I have some details from Jonathan Abrams' book, Boys Among Men, which I highly recommend you go pick up. I'll put a link for it in the description. It's a great, great read. Jonathan's a great author. But in here, we'll get into some details about ABCD camp, Sonny Vaccaro, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and a game that sealed Lenny's fate. Actually, there's just one shot that sealed Lenny's fate. It's a wild story. Trust me on this. So part 1, let's go through a little bit of who Lenny Cooke is, kind of how he came to be, all those good things. So in this snippet, by the way, all of these snippets are from articles that will be linked in the description. So if you enjoy those, if you enjoyed this video, go check out those articles. They are fantastic. Lenny Cooke, the LeBron James destroyer. Back in 2001, the talk was all about one player, and a player you probably haven't heard of. The talk surrounded someone who was never drafted into the NBA and someone who never played a game in the NBA. But at the time, the experts genuinely thought that he would be an all-time great. Ahead of Carmelo Anthony and also ahead of LeBron James was a man called Lenny Cooke, a player who many thought would scale the top end of the NBA, but a player who never made it. We'll get into the details, but, you know, a little bit of a foreshadowing here. Lenny Cooke was the #1 prospect, the #1 high school prospect in the United States at one point, ahead of LeBron, ahead of Carmelo, and ahead of a bunch of other guys who made the NBA. And that's what makes his story so fascinating. The fact that he was the #1 high school prospect, and yet he never made the NBA, never played in an NBA game, never made an NBA team. Lenny Cooke, so like, who is Lenny Cooke? Lenny Cooke was born in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1982. His family soon thereafter moved to Bushwick, which is a borough of Brooklyn. And he didn't have the greatest upbringing. You know, Jonathan, we'll get into some of the details here. I guess I'll just pull this over to the side because it kind of fits in with this. So he lived near a cemetery. He lived on the second floor of a wooden building. Gunshots would wake him up constantly throughout the night. And then on his way to school, he would have to dodge hookers and drug dealers. So you kind of get the picture, right? Like, not the best neighborhood in the world, not the best upbringing for a young lad, not the best area for a young lad to be in. And this is a part of another story, but not the best area, right? Safe to say. But Lenny found basketball. And once he found basketball, I mean, it was a match made in heaven. He was so insanely talented. As a high school freshman, Cooke was named as an all-city selection after averaging 20 points and 11 rebounds per game as a high school freshman. Then after averaging 30 points and 15 rebounds per game as a sophomore, the nation started to take notice of his talents. Now, Lenny's junior year is really where things just start to explode. So listen to this. He ends up transferring to Northern Valley Regional High School, New Jersey, and averaged 25 points, 10 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks per game as a junior in high school. And then his senior year, he averaged 31.5 points in 8 games. It says he got off to a monster start only to be forced to stop playing when he turned 19 due to the regulations in New Jersey. So a little bit of a foreshadowing to part 2, but Lenny was held back twice in 4 years in high school. So by the time he was a senior, he was already 19 years old, and there were some regulations in New Jersey about how long he could play. So he was only able to play 8 games his senior year, but he was averaging 31.5 points. I mean, again, just wild. And here in the article, it says Cooke had a breakout season. The hype looked to be legitimate, and he was ranked the #1 prospect of the future, ahead of 2 current NBA stars who we already mentioned, LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony. Just #1 prospect in the country. Like, I know I keep repeating myself. I sound like a broken record, but like, ahead of LeBron and Carmelo, who ended up becoming LeBron, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. Carmelo, certainly a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest pure scorers, mid-range assassins the game has seen. So 2 legitimate, obviously, NBA players. But Cook had a little bit of, I'd say, like a dark side to him. Maybe dark side is like the wrong phrase to use, but he had some things that he had to grapple with. So, like, for instance, when he was playing AAU basketball, he would fake his way through push-ups, arrive late for morning drills, and tell his coach that a punishment of running suicides at 6:30 the next morning will not work for him. 8 a.m. is better. He says he took money and shoes to play for various teams in different tournaments. At an AAU event in Las Vegas, Cook appeared to be more interested in chasing tail than proving himself on the court. And this is where Lenny's story kind of really diverges. And this to me is like a classic. You know that picture of, hey, here's a path, A, path B, like choose which path you want to go down. One path leads to light and greatness and happiness, and the other path leads to darkness and despair and sadness and all that. That was one of these moments for Lenny. And he had to make a huge decision. He enrolled in this adult high school to try and continue playing, but he essentially had to decide, did he want to go to college, which he was considering St. John's because it was close to home and he felt like he would be a good fit there. So did he want to continue playing basketball at a college level, or did he want to declare for the NBA draft? And that's kind of where Jonathan's book comes in. Again, I can't recommend this enough. Boys Among Men. Jonathan takes a look at high school stars and the ones that made it and the ones who didn't, obviously with the NBA. So like you have your Kevin Garnett's, your Kobe Bryant's, your LeBron James's, but you also have your Lenny Cookes, right? Like all these guys who declared for the NBA draft as a high school prospect but never made it. Like we hear about all the guys who made it, but we rarely hear about the guys who didn't. And so that's why I love Jonathan's book so much, because it highlights stories like Lenny's. And so at this point, again, this goes into a little more detail. Cook starts talking to agents, and there were many universities that were interested in Lenny. He was kind of led astray by some of the agents who were trying to make money off Lenny at the time. The agents kept telling him, no, like, trust me, if you declare for the draft, a lot of teams are going to love you. They're going to take you, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the choice he ended up making. He ended up declaring for the NBA draft as a high schooler and just never made it. He never panned out. It never worked. And that's where Jonathan's book comes in and will fill in some of the gaps as to why Lenny didn't make it. Now, a big part of all of this is Sonny Vaccaro, and you'll see how Sonny Vaccaro ties in as we go over to Jonathan's book and some of the details in there. For those who don't know Sonny Vaccaro, he, just a legend of the game. I think there's a couple biographies out there on him. I highly suggest you go pick them up and read it. He convinced Michael Jordan to sign with Nike. He was just a god at Nike in terms of marketing. And then he moved on to Adidas and Reebok and was able to sign a bunch of different NBA players to these shoe deals. Really kind of the first person to bring in that era of, shoe deals and NBA players and kind of merge them together. And so Sonny Vaccaro, just an absolute legend. He was able to sign LeBron James to a $90 million deal with Nike before LeBron even plays his first NBA game. So obviously an eye for talent. And like I said, really just ushered in that era of NBA players signing these massive shoe deals with these companies. All right, now to Jonathan's book. So we already kind of went over this first part about Lenny's upbringing. This part was interesting to me. So anything you see in quotations directly taken from Jonathan's book. This is Lenny talking directly. He said, the things men were doing, I was doing at 16, 17, 18 years old. I was in the club at 4 and 5 in the morning while y'all was getting ready for school the next day. I never thought it was going to end. And he was held back twice in 4 years. So this kind of points to some of, again, the things that Lenny was grappling with. He talks about how he really wanted to be a millionaire like Stephon Marbury and these other guys in the league and kind of live that lifestyle. And he was doing that already at 16, 17, 18 years old. Like I said, being in the club late at night kind of goes to show the things that Lenny was doing in those years. Now, this is where it gets super interesting. So Gary Charles is another character in this story. He was the coach of the Lighthouse Panthers. They were a powerhouse AAU team back then. And he was also friends, you could say, with Sonny Vaccaro. They became, I think, business partners at one point. That might be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But they got very close. And this is where the ABCD camp comes in. And if you're not familiar with the ABCD camp, this will give you a little bit of a glimpse into how important this camp was. The ABCD camp was started by Sonny Vaccaro, and it was meant to showcase the top high school prospects in the country. And going to show how important this camp was, a strong couple days at the camp could propel a high school player to the same echelon among NBA scouts as 2 or 3 solid years playing at a major university like Duke or North Carolina. Tracy McGrady went to this camp. Kobe Bryant went to this camp. LeBron James, as we'll see very shortly, went to this camp. And so did Lenny Cooke. So a bunch of talent made its way through this camp. And eventually the NBA kind of caved in and they're like, all right, we'll send our scouts. We'll send some assistant coaches out there to go watch these guys play. So it was a very well-known camp. And like I said, and as the quote states, a lot of, high-ranking high school prospects went to this camp to show off their skills and also see how they, match up with other top prospects in the country. Now, I just love this story. So Gary Charles is talking about Kobe's dunk at the ABCD camp. He says he started out in Atlanta, Georgia, made a turn around Maryland, and came down in Jersey and dunked the ball so hard on someone that the place went crazy. I mean, obviously, this video isn't about Kobe Bryant. I would love to do one day on kind of his journey because there's a bunch of details in there too. But again, young Kobe, I could go on and on about just how incredible he was. And I want to include this quote because anytime I get a chance to include a Kobe quote or story, like I just want to. That's how much I love Kobe. His first time at this camp was summer of the year 2000. He was 18 years old. And then the next year, so 2001, he comes back to the camp and there's this guy called LeBron James. Now, if you haven't heard of him, he may be the greatest basketball player of all time. But LeBron James shows up to camp and their teams are about to play one another. Now, this is from someone who was at the camp. He said, Lenny was all show. He was New York with a lot of flair to his game. There was this calmness about LeBron. He was just taking everything in stride. And so Lenny and LeBron are playing this game. Little spoiler alert, LeBron ends up with 24 points. Lenny ends up with 9. So LeBron clearly outplays Lenny Cooke. But there is one shot in this entire game that to me alters and really seals the fate for Lenny Cooke and honestly alters NBA history. So check this out. It's the game is about to be over. It's super close. They're going back and forth. LeBron gets the ball and he basically is like running towards the hoop. Lenny is, I think, parallel to him, grabs LeBron's arm trying to slow him down, fouls LeBron. LeBron basically chucks up this three-pointer. It goes in plus the foul, and that basically ends the game. And so this is Lenny talking about the shot. Again, direct quote from Lenny Cooke. He said that shit had to be the luckiest shit ever. He hasn't hit one of those since he has been in the league. Not like that. No, sir. And then Lenny asked LeBron, how the fuck you make that shot? And LeBron said, I just threw it up. And then Sonny Vaccaro talking about the shot and adding his 2 cents. He said, it's probably the most important shot a high school kid has ever made if you allow history to play out. Lenny Cooke was the guy. He was New York. What you saw in those 10 seconds was the transferring of the baton, and LeBron never let it down. If Lenny wins the game, LeBron is still great and all that, but maybe Lenny Cooke's life changes. So after this, after the shot, as we talked about earlier, Lenny declares for the draft. No team ends up drafting him in the first 2 rounds. Basically, his NBA career never pans out. And a lot of people point to this shot that LeBron hit as like the reason why, and Lenny's performance in that game. And that's why Sonny Vaccaro says it's arguably the most important shot a high school kid has ever made. And LeBron even talks about, there's a quote in the book from him where he said, like, in the moment, I didn't realize how big that shot was. And honestly, still to this day, I really can't comprehend it. I don't understand. I'm just not able to grasp how big of a shot, how many things that shot changed. So honestly, a really interesting, amazing, intriguing story. And then this is, last but not least, this is Lenny talking about maybe why he stumbled and didn't make the NBA like he thought he would. He said these guys, LeBron, Carmelo, Amari, they had their guidance. They had someone who was their coach from 6 years old, or they had their father who knows sports or played basketball. I didn't have that. Sometimes I think if I ever had good luck, I wouldn't know what to do with it. That last part. Sometimes I think if I ever had good luck, I wouldn't know what to do with it. That one, that's a crazy quote. One other thing real quick. So I was actually watching my video back, and I realized I didn't do a great job of explaining why Lenny didn't actually make the NBA. Because I already know a bunch of people are going to be like, wait, so you're telling me this #1 high school prospect in the nation basically had one bad game against LeBron, and then he just didn't make the NBA, like scouts were out on him? There's actually a lot more to the story. There's an entire Lenny Cooke documentary that I just highly suggest you go and watch. It's fantastic watch. I watched it a couple years ago. Just go watch it because it goes into a lot more detail. But I found this Reddit post from Kid2468. He really kind of goes into why Lenny didn't make it. So the first part here, and we don't have to read this word for word, But essentially, you know how I talked about the fact that Lenny was held back twice in 4 years in high school. So a big problem were his grades. And so he was a 19-year-old senior when he played LeBron in the ABCD camp. And then other players at the camp, LeBron and Melo, were 17-year-old, soon-to-be juniors. So Lenny was behind them. And so after the spring/summer of his senior year, he hadn't graduated yet, meaning he needed additional credits. So basically, Lenny had three options. He could have stayed with Debbie, and that's a whole nother story, but Debbie was essentially his caretaker. He could have stayed with Debbie, went back to high school as a student only, not have played basketball, and graduated high school. Probably would have ruined his chances at making the NBA, right? Taking essentially a whole year off of basketball. Or he could have went to a prep academy, stayed in shape, played basketball there, get the credits that he needs. It was probably his best route if he wanted to make the NBA. And, you know, again, the other option, the one staying with Debbie, wasn't the best, but at least he graduates. And maybe there's a shot in, you know, in a different league or playing overseas or something like that. So those are the first two options. And then the third option is the one that Lenny chose. Now, remember how in the video I said that there were some agents who, you know, tricked Lenny and weren't really the best influence? Well, this goes into more detail. So he got trapped by a scout named Jeff, who was attached to a predatory sports agency. They convinced Lenny and his crew to move and train in Flint, Michigan. Ironic how bad it is there. That is pretty funny. And prep for the draft. He basically signs over his future NBA rights to this group. Seems they gave him six figures in cash credit. I think it was $300,000 in basically in like a credit line. Probably trinkets, jewelry, meals up until draft day when the scheme is exposed. He was off radar from everyone in the normal basketball world for 18 months, meaning he left summer of 2001. So this is the ABCD camp, right? Summer 2001. And then resurfaced and randomly declared in the May-June of 2002. So he declares for the 2002 NBA draft. No team would have dared to take a monetary chance on him at this stage. He would have been a then 20, soon-to-be 21-year-old high school prospect who hadn't played in almost 2 years, who had stories regarding a hood entourage and a selfish attitude. So this gives a little more detail as to why maybe Lenny wasn't drafted. Again, wild story. Clearly, there were some faults of his own. He made some bad decisions, got involved with this predatory sports agency. So, yeah, there's just a little more detail on why Lenny didn't end up getting drafted into the NBA. Like I said, pick up Boys Among Men. It goes into much more detail. The book is in no way sponsored or affiliated with this video, but I just love it so much. And the story of Lenny Cooke, I think, is a good reminder of something I've been thinking about recently, which is this idea of survivorship bias, right? Like you go on social media or you read stories of LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, these guys who made it to the big league, who were able to fight through trial and tribulation, who were able to fight less than ideal circumstances to make it to the NBA. But for every Kevin Garnett, for every Kobe Bryant, for every LeBron James, there is a Lenny Cooke. There is a kid who thought that he would make it too, who did all the right things. In Lenny's case, maybe he didn't do all the right things, but there's certainly stories out there of guys who also went through dark periods of time, but still came out the other end. But Lenny didn't, right? Like he didn't fulfill his dream of making the NBA. And so I think it's important to remember with survivorship bias, we have this tendency to believe that everyone just makes it. Like, okay, if you just work hard, if you do this, X, Y, and Z, like you'll make it. But some guys do all of that and they never do make it and they don't make the NBA. You could follow all of Elon Musk's advice. You could work hard day and night. There is an element of luck involved in entrepreneurship and generating wealth. 100% there's an element of luck. And so you could do all the right things and never make it. Same with the NBA. You could work hard. You could put up 1,000 shots a day. You could do all of these things, but you just never make the league. And so that's one thing I took away from Lenny Cooke's story, besides it being just insane, was this idea of survivorship bias and how, like I said, there are guys who don't make it. But yeah, that's the story of Lenny Cooke, a guy who was the #1 high school prospect in the country and then who came up against LeBron James and, got outplayed in this one game. Again, LeBron scored 24 points, Lenny scored 9, and LeBron hit the shot, the three-pointer that ultimately, in a way, ended Lenny's NBA dreams. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give this video a like or drop a comment. If you didn't enjoy it, let me know how I can be better. If there's some constructive criticism that you like to tell me about, I am all ears. I'm always open to improving these videos for you guys. Anything you guys want to see different, just let me know. I try to respond to all my comments. But like I say, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe, share it with your friends. And I also have a podcast. It's called the Victory Degree Podcast. It is on the same channel that you are on now. I post full clips from my podcast, and I also post clips from the podcast, so shorter segments. Again, all on the same channel, or it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you prefer that. Thanks again for watching the video, and hope you have a great day.